Welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and today I am going to be bringing you my favorite fairy tale retellings. This will be the perfect video for recommending you retellings for Once Upon a Readathon, which is coming up in January. I'm so excited about that. All the information is linked down below in the description. You can check that all out for how you can participate and choose a team. It's going to be tons of fun. So today we're talking about fairy tale retellings. My patrons really wanted to see me do this video. I can't believe I've actually not done a video yet of my favorite fairy tale retellings. I've done a lot that had fairy tale retellings in them, but I don't think I've actually done just my favorite fairy tale retellings. So let's just get into that today. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love to have you do so. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Etsy shop and my Patreon, my Goodreads. All of that's down below. Don't forget to give me a like and comment down below and let me know what your favorite fairy tale retelling is. Before we get into this video, it is so kindly sponsored by Adriel. He spent 10 years working on the world building of Illyadra and the concept before even putting pen to paper. And what he came up with was something kind of similar, apparently, to The Last Airbender, but with high fantasy. There's 5 different magic systems. I'm really excited to see what that means and learn more about them. And it's also apparently a very character-driven story that is super brutal. There's a lot of bloodshed. And yeah, it sounds like it's political and adventurous. And I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. Novia was once the strongest nation in the world, but it collapsed. Our main characters are Cairo and Atera, their brother and sister. They actually end up traveling to the future to escape the collapse. And then when they do return generations later, they find that their land has become oppressed by this Stone Age militia. Unfortunately, when they did travel to the future, they actually lost this crown along the way that was really important. And when they come back, the people actually expect him to have this crown, and they don't. So Atera starts to see her future in her dreams, and the imperialists, the Sigunai, find out, and they actually try to steal her away. Her brother has been injured, and he has to decide whether or not he can even go save her. This sounds really cool, really interesting. I'm excited to see what the philosophical discussions that are had in this, as well as learn a little bit more about this magic system, because it sounds very, very cool. There's actually 5 magic systems. I'm really intrigued to see what that means. To be character driven, it's multi-layered, and there's a lot of philosophical meaning and messaging behind it as well. So thank you so much, Adriel, for sponsoring today's video. That information is all going to be down below in the description as well. So let's get into my favorite retellings. This is in no particular order, so we're just going to go ahead and start out with Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. This is a 6 Swans retelling, I think is what it's called, and this is about Sorsha, and she and her brothers have been cursed by her new evil stepmother, and she is a sorceress, her stepmother, and so they've been cursed. Her brothers have been turned into swans, and she has actually lost the ability to speak. If she speaks, her brothers will say swans forever, so she has to save them, and in order to do so, she has to weave these sweaters out of these awful nettles that are very painful to touch, and she can't talk the entire time. And she honestly just goes through it this whole story. It is so tough to read, a lot of the things that she goes to. It's very gut-wrenching. You get so connected to Sorsha. This is set in a medieval Irish setting, and it's just so freaking good. Juliet Marillier does some of my favorite historical fantasy, and there is a romance in here as well, but I don't know that I would call it fantasy romance. Maybe, but there is a romance, and it is really sweet. Yeah, just check the trigger warnings going into this, though, because there definitely are quite a few triggers. Still, this is one of my favorite books of all time. If you want something that is just gut-wrenching and character-driven that will allow you to really connect to the character, if you like historical fantasy or you like retellings, just check this one out. It's an all-time favorite of mine for sure. If you haven't already read it, but you love fairy tale retellings, this needs to be at the top of your list. Okay, the next book I have here is a fantasy romance, and this is To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. This is actually the start of a series. So Daughter of the Forest is technically the start of a series, but each book follows a different generation. So it has different main characters, follows its own plot and everything like that. So it's a little bit different. This one is a series. I believe there's going to be 4 books, and each one follows the same couple, the same main character. This is actually a Rapunzel retelling, and it follows actually very closely with a lot of the vibes of the Disney version, Tangled, but like imagine it much more gruesome and dark. This is definitely a very dark fantasy romance. It's pretty brutal at times for sure. Check trigger warnings going into it, and know that this is a very complex and definitely problematic romance for sure. I've read the first 2 books in the series. I still don't know where it's going. It has kind of Witcher vibes, so if you like Witcher, maybe definitely check this one out. Sarah A. Parker has a flowery writing style too, so you have to be down for a flowery writing style if you read it. I think she's a wonderful writer. I love it. But there is a lot of like floweriness, a lot of atmosphere, a lot of metaphors and that kind of thing. So just know that going in. I loved this. It's one of 2 Rapunzel retellings or reimaginings that I have on this list, but this one's really different from the other one. But yeah, I really, really, really love this one. If you're looking for a fantasy romance and you want something like dark and brooding, then this is a good one with some romance. I think the 4th and final book in the series is coming out in 2024. I cannot wait for it. I still need to read book 3, but that's going to be happening very soon. Another fantasy romance that I have on this list is Entreat Me by Grace Draven. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and this is about, but it's like very different from the original because it's actually about like 2 sisters and 2 brothers. So we have our heroine, who is the older sister of who is thought to be the Beauty and the Beast retelling of it all. And she falls for our hero's son. And that those 2 need to get together in order to free him and his dad from the curse. So sorry, they're not brothers, they're father and son, but the other 2 are sisters. Okay, so his son needs to find love in order to free them from this curse that was brought down on him by his ex-wife. Well, not ex-wife, like she's passed away, but she's left this curse on them. It's really dark, but it's also it's got historical fantasy vibes. And I really like the atmosphere in this one. Part of it takes place during the winter solstice, so this is actually a good time probably to read this book. If you're a seasonal reader that likes fantasy romance and retellings, this is definitely the time of year to read this. But yeah, I really liked the vibes of this. I liked how dark it was, but I also really liked the humor in this too. The hero and the heroine really have a really fun banter amongst them. It gets pretty spicy too, so there's that. I wasn't expecting that as much from Grace Draven. I really have to read more of her stuff because I've only ever read this one and really enjoyed it, but then I also tried to read Phoenix Unbound, I think is what it was called, and I DNF'd that one because I was really bored. So I don't know, I have to try more from her. I have Master of Crows, so we'll see how I like that one. But yeah, this is a really cool and different Beauty and the Beast retelling. So I really like that it took a whole new flip on the story, but then at the same time, it kept the atmosphere and vibes and even darkened them down just a touch too. And that was really cool. Okay, next I have The Book of Gothel by Mary McMine. And this is another Rapunzel reimagining, but it's actually more following Lady Gothel when she's a child and then growing up into adolescence and then adulthood. Definitely not a retelling per se, but I'm still leaving on this list because it's still about that same fairy tale. And even the beginning of the story, it shows them finding this old original version of this story. I really liked it. I think it definitely still fits on this list. This story follows Helvice, and Helvice is a little child when you start out and maybe like almost an adolescent teen, but not quite, like maybe like a preteen. And her mother passes away pretty soon into the beginning of the story. She herself is really not trusted by the town. She has really dark eyes. She doesn't fit in. People think she's a witch. And her mother does have some different ideas. She's basically considered to be pagan, which is like not cool at this time. And her father is a Christian, and there's a lot of conflict between the 2 religions. And so when her mother passes away, then her dad gets remarried and basically moves out of the house and just leaves her there, abandons her there by herself. And so she basically goes on this journey to try to learn more about her mother, more about her mother's religion, more about witchcraft. In the process, she finds the Tower of Gothel, and she meets someone there and learns more about herbalism and the arts and things like that. But don't expect a major plot from this story, okay? Because this book is not going to give you plot. It's going to give you character development. It's going to give you a lot of good conversation on the topic of religion. It's going to give you atmosphere and beautiful writing. It's really good for, I think, fall and early winter too, because there's a lot of discussions of like winter squash and mulled cider and mulled wine and stuff like that. So I think it's a good book to read this time of year if you haven't already. But it's definitely not plot driven. So please don't go into this hoping for any kind of plot, because you're not really going to get one. It's just, I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. It was very slow. It took me a long time to read, like over a week probably, and that's pretty long for such a short book. But it was very character driven and I really, really enjoyed it. And I was really able to get a lot out of it. So definitely recommend for you character driven readers out there that like character and atmosphere, because this had it. It's also set in the Black Forest of Germany, which is where like a lot of my ancestors are from, that region. And so that also was really fun for me. I just really enjoyed it. Okay, next I have here The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is arguably one of my favorite, or my favorite book of all time. I've read it twice, and I don't reread books as an adult. I'm really bad about that. I just don't do it. But this one was just so totally worth it. This is a retelling of multiple different Russian folklore stories. Vasilisa, Baba Yaga, Morosko. So if your fairy tale is Morosko, then this would count. Any of the 3 books in this series would count. But yeah, this has ultimate snowy vibes. It's set in the northern Russian wilderness. It's about Vasilisa. She has this connection with the land and with the creatures of the land. And very similar to the Book of Gothel, this is a conflict between Christianity and pagan ways. There will be a broad overarching conflict as well, where magic also meets the Mongolian Empire overtaking Russia. So it's kind of like somehow the two come together and it's like a mashed up conflict. So it's pretty cool in that way. I feel like I've talked about this book so many times. I don't really know what else I can say about it other than it's just beautiful, snowy, wintry fairy tale retellings, Russian retellings. I mean, ultimate atmosphere. One of my favorite books of all time. I don't know what else to say. Vasilisa is definitely one of my favorite characters of all time. If you haven't read this and you watch me, you already know. I highly recommend. Okay, so sorry if my camera moved a little bit there. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention Uprooted and Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Both of this are retellings. Uprooted is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I loved it. Set on the edge of a mysterious and dangerous forest. And Spinning Silver is a retelling of multiple fairy tales, actually. It's a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin and Cinderella, and I think one other as well. And this is more about like Ice Fae. So it's definitely got like a colder setting. They are both set in similar regions. I think that Uprooted is set in what is actually basically Latvia, and I think this one is set, I don't know, maybe Poland? No, or it was this one Latvia and this one was like Poland. Something like that. But they're both Eastern European. Really fun retellings. I love them both. I think I gave them 4 stars. They're not ultimate all-time favorites, but they are such quintessential awesome retellings that, yeah, I have to mention them. This next one is definitely an all-time favorite of mine, and that's Wildwood Dancing by Juliette Marillier. This is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. This is set in Transylvania, and this is actually a YA story. This is so flipping good. I mean, it's Juliet Marillier, but imagine just a little bit faster paced because this is YA. So I don't know. I don't know how to describe it other than if this actually might be my favorite Juliet Marillier I've ever read. I don't know. It's so close to Daughter of the Forest for me. But like I said, this one does have better pacing. And we have fae, we have vampires, we have magical dancing in a fae forest. And like I said, it's in Transylvania. It's really good for like fall vibes and winter vibes, I really think. And it's also got one of the prettiest covers that I own. Okay, that's gonna be it for me today for my favorite fairy tale retellings. I hope I didn't leave any out, but my camera is about to die, so I have to head on out. Thank you again to Adriel for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to check out Illyadra. All the information's down below in the description. All my social media is down there as well, and my Patreon. This video was also co-sponsored by my patrons. I've got multiple tiers on there, lots of different fun stuff that we do, live shows, extra content, sprints, all that good stuff. So if you're interested, definitely go check that out. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Click the like button, comment down below, let me know what your favorite retelling is. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life.
You felt that way. Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.